sad today, man. Sad to hear about those firemen in Idaho, and I just wanted to talk about that for a couple minutes.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely, man. It's horrible. I've been thinking about them
It
all day.
is good.
Oh
But
no, floor is yours,
yeah,
man.
floor is yours.
Okay, bro. So, it is a very horrible thing, and I will tell you right now that there is intel, open source intel, that there are planned attacks on hospitals, first responders, stuff like that. But I can tell you, even back in the mid '90s, that was intel that we were receiving. Specifically back then, the abortion clinic bombings were a big thing.
Right.
Um, and first responders, primarily firemen and EMTs, are soft targets, man. And so if you're
Hmm.
going out to make a statement, that's what you're going to do.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this isn't an uncommon occurrence, and I mean it's not something that happens every week or whatnot. But I can give you a couple examples.
Please. Yeah.
Not even necessarily with gunplay all the time, but Montgomery County, Maryland, back in the late '90s, maybe early 2000s. Guy called 911, said he was sick. EMTs got there, ended up having to bail out of a second story window because he tried to kill him with a knife. Um, there was an incident up in Maine, I believe it was. Guy set a house on fire, and I mean a lot of people do this. Set houses on fire and then open fire on the firemen. Start shooting at the firemen as soon as they arrived.
Mm.
That guy killed a few firemen in Maine. That wasn't that many years ago. Kentucky, another incident. I think it was domestic. The wife was laying in the front yard shot. The first responding engine company officer and the medic got off, went to go attend to her, and they dude shot them up, and I think somebody else. Like I said, it happens. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, I don't disagree, man. The circumstances surrounding this guy's past and whatnot. I think more so, I don't look at this necessarily as a situation where he was activated by some entity and that's the reason why I did it.
Hmm.
I think the guy's a nut job, but I
Yeah.
think more so where you're seeing the propaganda is the fifth generational warfare. It's the information war. It's who
Yeah.
can get out the propaganda the first. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Initially, right after this dude was identified, so I was a biker, and I started seeing information where people were saying that he was linked to a 1% bike club,
Mm.
and that's why he did it. And I don't believe that to be true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily go around trying to pick fights with the feds or you
Right.
know law enforcement and whatnot. They try to stay away from them as much as possible. So,
Right.
but again, I only bring that up simply because I think that really the play here is the informational warfare.
Hmm.
It's who can get the narrative out first. Like I said, there's a bunch of crazy narratives. People saying it's Antifa, blah blah blah. I think that probably dude is just a nut job, man. It sounds like that was the pattern. But again,
Yep.
if you're going to use an operative, you're going to put that pattern of life narrative out there anyway. So
Yeah, that's what's so crazy is he could just be a sicko, and then there's people who have these narratives they want people to believe in, so they just attach themselves to the story so they can use him. Like there's people who want war with Iran, so they're like, oh, this guy must have been with Iran. He's in a sleeper cell, and then it helps them push their narrative for war. It's just insane.
yeah, I agree, man. And I mean, it could be as simple as like this dude had a mental break. He decided that the gods were telling him that he needed to set a fire to save, whatever.
Hmm.
And the firemen showing up were, the devil attacking God. And so
Mm.
he defended God by killing firemen. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Right.
it could be as simple as something like that. Like just like as a side story, man, dealing with people with psychotic episodes. There was a dude in this area that wasn't even from here. But anyway, long story short, he ended up causing a bunch of havoc downtown. I ran into him at the hospital at the time I was working there and in security. And I had a conversation with him in the middle of a psychotic break. And during the conversation, he explained to me that his mother and his wife were in danger, and that's why he had broken into the house that he was in. So I asked him to explain further, and he told me that um, I said, well, were you able to get to both of them? And he said, what do you mean both of them? And I said, well, you said your mother and your wife. And he said, well, my mother and my wife are the same person. Incest is the purest, form of love. And then 3 days
Wow.
later, he took a nosedive out of the third floor window, of
Wow.
course, on my day off.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And then later he committed suicide. He ended up getting flown to Baltimore. He later committed suicide off park. At least this is what I was told. He committed suicide by jumping off parking deck in Baltimore from University of Maryland when he was released.
Wow. So he
So
survived that swan dive.
yeah. You know what I mean? But
Wow.
that's because in his mind, you know, God was telling him, "Hey, bro, you can fly." You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
Like,
Yeah, it's like
you
when I
got
talk
it,
about
homeboy.
it's like when I
Do
talk
it.
about the Herbert Mullins serial killer who, he was convinced that he had to take people's lives to save California from sinking into the Pacific. There's
Mhm.
definitely just sick people out there. When it comes to first responders, like, what do you think? Is it going to get to a point where they just have to start caring? Like, is that a possibility? I guess it depends on the state, right?
So, yeah, I mean, there are some places that do allow. I mean, I can tell you right now, I personally have never seen or known of a fireman to carry on a fire engine, but I've heard rumors of a lot of them. I know that during times of civil unrest, like specifically the old heads when I first joined talked about, the Martin Luther King riots and
Mm-hmm.
shit,
Yep.
and that, they all were armed to the fucking teeth because of the
Right.
fact that they were all white dudes showing
Yeah.
up on a fire truck, man, and they were I mean, we've had incidents in the community before. There was a dude high on PCP that burnt down an entire shopping center, took pop shots at us,
Wow.
um, took pop shots at the police, ended up dying in the fire. Anyway, family accused us of letting him burn. Well, now homeboys tried to shoot me. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
But
Wow.
anyway, the next call that we ran into that community, we ended up having the ambulance was by themselves because it came out as a medical. They called for assistance, and we ended up having to run in there with axes and Halligan bars to try to prevent them from getting jumped by people in the community because word had spread that we'd let this dude die.
Right. And now you're the
You
enemy,
know,
even though you're there to help.
exactly, man. It had nothing to do with it. Like, and I won't go into any of the gruesome shit or whatever, but like, dude was right at the front door, man. I mean, I was there the next day to recover his body.
Wow.
The gun was right there with him. Like, I can promise you, it wasn't a figment of our imaginations. You
Of
know what I
course.
mean? So,
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think it's good for everyone to just remain as calm as possible when trying to understand these situations while, understanding all the crazy stuff we know, but also just like
mhm.
sometimes it's just a crazy person. Like that Robert Card story, I think is really weird in Maine, where he just shows up and does this stuff. He has a psychiatric history, hearing voices and stuff. You know, could be just all alone.
Mhm.
I don't think this story in Idaho is going to be. I really don't. My gut says it's not going to be something that happens more in that area. But when it comes to the accelerationist stuff, we've been seeing a lot of that take off. Whether it's
Mhm.
mass shooters or people convincing others to harm themselves. So it's all these things we have to consider. But it's just good to remember, like you're saying, we can't get too emotionally tied to a narrative when it comes to this stuff. That's what they want.
Right. Right. And and I'll throw you, I'll even, throw you one right down down the pike, man. I have personally seen intelligence, like law enforcement intelligence, that has come from Antifa where they give specific directions on how to start wildland fires.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't disagree, man. This is 100% could be an accelerationist, and this dude in his own mind might have been an accelerationist, not even associated with
Yes.
anybody that we know of, you know what I mean?
That's
So
that feels closest to reality, honestly. The more we dig
yeah.
in, it's gonna be hard to know. They wipe this guy's social media platform, and then maybe if it is something more nefarious outside of him just being a sicko, they can swoop in and be like, "Here's the social media," and it's not even legit. It's weird that it's gone, but it could have been the
Right.
platforms taking it off because they do that as well. So they're just like, "Oh, we found him. Let's delete it," and then maybe they give it to the authorities. I don't really know what happens with it, but it happened with Thomas Matthew Crooks. It happens a lot with these stories, which doesn't help. But yeah, no, it's weird. And a lot of those fires out in California started by
Hmm.
arsonists. It wasn't all climate change. It's people out there
Yeah.
trying to cause destruction.
Yeah, well, people out there cause destruction, and Democrats are retards. Sorry, I
Yes.
probably shouldn't have said that,
No,
man.
we're gonna put that on a bumper sticker now.
You probably should, man. And I can tell you right now, it's really funny because they've been scrubbed. But I can remember sitting in the firehouse like in the late '90s, early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s. Who the hell knows? But anyway, I remember reading an article in Firehouse magazine talking about Cal Fire was screaming at the top of their lungs about the mismanagement of the forestry out there, about how they weren't doing prescribed burns like they were supposed to. They were very concerned about a massive wildland fire taking place.
Yep.
And nothing's changed, man. They never allocated the funds to do anything.
Oh,
about
but
it,
when Trump says, you should be doing those controlled burns, he's all of a sudden an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. And I can tell you, and I'm not a red card wildland fireman. I was a structural fireman. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll go crawl through anything that's on fire except the woods, bro. Trees explode. That's not a cool place, and I don't run. I'm too big to run. So wildland firefighting is just not for me, bro. Crawling is much better pace of life for me, and that's how structural firemen do their deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I can't imagine all the fire that these guys yesterday had to deal with. They're in this brush fire, smoke, and then they're being shot at. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah, dude, it'll definitely cause you to shit yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but it's like I said, it's not necessary. I mean, and then again, I started in the mid '90s, dude. We had bulletproof vests back then, and we had SOPs in place where on certain incidents we were required to wear a bulletproof vest either underneath of our turnout gear or over top of it.
Wow.
And so it's not unheard of. I mean, firemen have been targets in the past, but specifically like domestic violence was where it usually was. But again, you can get that whack job that's just like, hey, man, I'm going to make the newspaper tonight.
Do you know what it was that made firefighters start wearing the bulletproof vest? Was there some story from the 90s that were like, we got to do this now?
It probably came before then, so the ones that we had were like hand-me-downs from the police department, so it probably was something where like they were embezzling money and sold them to the fire department because it's like an interagency transfer and they sold it and somebody, whatever, who the hell knows? I don't know of any specific incidents myself. I would imagine that's probably more of not a national type incident, but more of like a regional or local type incident that spurred that.
Yeah.
My firehouse in the mid '90s, right out our back door was Section 8 housing project. I mean, Friday and Saturday nights, you could go out and listen to the gunshots, and we knew it was time to pull a bulletproof vest out because somebody just got shot up.
Right. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, I don't know exactly that there was a catalyst specifically.
Yeah. Just hand-me-downs. Well, I appreciate you calling in and giving us that context, man. Always a pleasure talking.
Yeah, bro. You guys have a great night. Excellent show as always, man. Appreciate talking to you guys.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Sonny.